Hi, Chris. So, as I promised, I'll try to answer your questions. I was trying to think how can I be able to explain you or to tell you, answer your questions in a short time when finally all of that will take me hours. And already I feel the tears coming to my eyes. Um, so I'll try to stay very short as much as I can. And um, but it may surprise you. Um, So yeah, I've been living here in Aleppo for more than 2 years. And when you're asking me, for example, what is missing from Western media coverage of the war in Syria, I would like to tell you everything. The image have been cropped. Of course, what they show existed. Yani the bombings of the planes, yani the situation, the humanitarian situation happened. But all the reasons why all the situation in the West Aleppo. In East Aleppo, there were around 125,000 people living. In West Aleppo, there were around 1.300,000 million people living under hell every day. Not less as East Aleppo, but never ever. When I arrived here, nobody talk about. Nobody. We were living under. I can't define it. The people were dying in the street from the mortars, from the doshka, from the gas rocket bottle. It was a nightmare. We didn't know if we can live or die. I slept like for months with my clothes, with my bag ready, because I could hear the terrorists outside. And I will explain why I'm calling them terrorists and why there is no rebel in this area of Aleppo, why there were no rebels during the Aleppo battle. I could hear them starting to sing, and every time they were starting to throw rockets, to scream Allahu Akbar. So this is one point. The millions of people who have been living in area controlled by the regime, so the Syria area, because they are not regime area, they are Syria, yani. There is no regime area. This is the country, yani. And the terrorists. We have been showing these people as rebels. You can ask any government who are supporting the terrorists here in Syria, who calling them rebels, if they can allow to get just one of them a visa. Nobody will be allowed to go in any country in the world. Why? Because all of their groups in America, in France, in Canada, in UK, they are considered as terrorist organizations. How can countries support terrorists here, calling them rebels, when in their own country they consider these groups as terrorist organizations? And these people were massacring people every day here. You have no idea what we lived. And nobody talk about. The entire world were focused on East Aleppo, on image selected, on image cropped, because there is a lot of things that they didn't want you to see. Your media, Huffington Post, have been following the war, and I've been reading a few articles which have been pretty sad, because I don't know if the people doesn't want to see what's happening, or if at the end the ignorance is so huge about the situation here, or if at the end you only have contacts who have been working or living in East areas and working with terrorists or supporting the Free Syrian Army, for example. I don't know. It's very hard for me to be able to talk about that in so short time. But when you're asking me, why do you think it is this? I can send you hundreds of posts I wrote all during the war, testimonies from people, video testimonies, photo testimonies. I try to export this part of the truth for this last years, because I lost families, I got shrapnels in the head, I saw people blowing up, I put pieces of children in bags, and we have been living this war in the worst moments. What I discovered when the liberation happened was just, I didn't even believe it, honestly. I arrived in the East Aleppo. I went immediately to the refugees areas from the first people who came back from the first days of the liberation. and yani, their stories. I published most of their stories. The food. I found tons of food, tons of medicines, but only dedicated for terrorists. When I have children I'm working with today who are still telling me that they were eating sponges because they had nothing to eat, and that if they wanted to have food, they had to be relatives to the terrorists or to have been part of the group terrorists. They try to keep everything to be able to keep the siege as long as they can and to keep the territory. You know, if you look today at Aleppo, there is around 1.5 million living here now because 85% of the population of the East decided by itself to come here instead to live by the grain buses to Idlib. If you come here today, you will see that there is no planes, no bombs, no anybody who died from like regime bombs, as we used to say. But we keep receiving rockets and mortars from terrorists from like 3 kilometers from where I am actually. The only one purpose we had about the no-fly zone and everything was to be able to be sure that we can keep the terrorists there and that the civilians which were stuck because they were a fatwa in the East Aleppo. If you try to escape East Aleppo, you consider as a supporter of the regime. If you're a supporter of the regime, you're executed or jailed. The people were executed at sight when they tried to live on the humanitarian corridors. I was on the humanitarian corridors. The terrorists were sending mortars on the humanitarian corridors, and the people were dying on these humanitarian corridors trying to escape. Most of the people escape during the worst of the fightings, or they escape outside of the humanitarian corridors where there were landmines. They took huge risks to come here. Why? Why? I'm not saying that this country, this government is the best. I'm not saying that they didn't do wrong things or mistakes, but they didn't do more than any other government in the world. Maybe that what I'm saying right now is surprising, but the only one reason today Aleppo haven't fell because I told you, Yani, I slept with my clothes, with my bag, because they were like 200 meters from me, and they were attacking by thousands. They were sending hundreds of mortars. People were dying from everywhere. We were running away from our house. For what? For freedom? This is freedom? If you come here and you ask the people their stories, I'm not sure you can believe it. So I'm telling you because you're telling me you may be gonna come to see. So welcome anytime. If you're coming to show exactly what's happening here, without, again, taking a side, at least be neutral, yes, welcome. I will help you as much as I can. When you're asking me how do white helmets heroes of terrorists, I can tell you the majority of them are terrorists. And I give you my 2 hands. And if what I am saying is wrong, you can cut it. You can... Look, I will tell you an example. I went for the last few months after the liberation to search into the rebels, the documents and everything I could find. I met the families who lived with them. I met the people who have been living in these areas. Their stories. Honestly, when I arrived in Syria, I sent a message to the white helmets to ask if I could help them. Yeah, I was ready to find a way through the Red Crescent to go in the east to be able to help them, because what I was seeing, and it was like just making me so sad. I wanted to help. And when I arrived here, I just understood that everything was fake. Yani, I can tell you that 80%, and I am very nice, 80% of the White Helmets, members were part of jihadist group. So imagine, tomorrow I come to you, I take a gun, I shot in your belly, I put the white helmets and I bring you to the hospital, I get a Nobel Prize. Because I bring you to the hospital and I save you. But I shot you first. The reality is that, and this is proved, I have the names, I have the documents, the testimony of the people. This group is Occidental Western finance organization made not for saving people, but for communication. I have testimonies of people tell me that they were harmed and they even shot one of their sons. I have testimonies of people are saying that they were stealing from the dead bodies. I have testimony of people who are saying that when the camera was on, they work and they help people. When the camera went off, they leave people and they're rebels. I can't say it's a general idea. Of course, there is people who were normal civilians, whatever their opposition, because I respect opposition people, whatever their reason is, who were part of the white helmets and were really helping people. The white helmets indirectly also help people, but the problem is not the fact to say that if they help or not. They are certainly not heroes, because during the day they were bombing us. We were receiving hundreds of projectiles every day. It was dozens of people dying every day in the West. It was dozens of people dying in the East because of their presence. You see today, no terrorists, no bombs. People live free. They have been condemning people by bringing the war up their head and maintaining them in the East Aleppo. They were the terrorists the day, bringing the fight the night, and the night they were white helmets saving the people under the war they bring. This is the reality. I don't know how to say that, yani, in a way. Anyway, it's really hard for me to be able to talk about that, but come here. I will show you all the people who live with them, all the people you will never see in the Western medias, and you will see what does that mean. So yeah, what is the best evidence you have seen for this? The testimonies, the people who have been living with them, who are risking their life by telling the truth. Why? Because there are lots of sleeping cells in East Aleppo. It's very dangerous for people in East Aleppo to talk about the terrorists or about the groups in general, about the opposition or whatever, in a bad way, because they're living among them. So it's a really proof of courage to do it. And there is documents, there is videos, there is archives, there is names, there is pictures. But I try to don't trust much what comes from outside, even if it's like real proof we can see it. I really trust the people from what they lived and from the risk they are taking by saying things about them, which can be very dangerous for their family and for their lives. This is the main point. And what can I say else? It's very hard for me to be able to talk about that. We have been living the worst, and the media have been saying like maybe 20% of what happened and erasing 80%. They keep spreading the war by maintaining the idea that there is a rebel fighting for freedom here. It doesn't exist. Maybe it exists in 2011, but from 2012, no. You can ask the people here. I can't tell you anything. And I used to tell people to don't believe what I say, but to don't believe what others says, to just listen and to make their own idea. So about the other parts, I don't need a press visa to answer your question because I am not a journalist. I am a humanitarian. I sold everything I have to be able to help people here. I finance the project for the children and for the families with my own money. How do you get about parts of Pierre where they're still fighting? I think today the worst is happening in Ghouta, for example, where like the war is happening in the same way it happened in Aleppo for the last few months before the liberation. Like lots of violence, but the army is moving fast to free the people who are living there. This is what people doesn't understand outside. This is not just bombings or killing people. This is moving and trying to liberate the area because both sides get bombed every day and people are dying. Much more people would have died if Aleppo hadn't been liberated today. There is Idlib. Idlib will be covered soon by all the media saying, oh my God, all the people are dying here. It is true. But why? Because the families, the children, the women, they had no choice. They had to follow their husband when they left East Aleppo. Most of the people who are living in Idlib today, like 80%, are members of terrorist groups or made their choice by themselves to come in Idlib and to support the terrorist groups. They know position in Idlib. You have to know it. And if there is opposition, what we can call people who are against the government, because they are all against the government somehow, for most of the people had the choice to come there or to stay there, because a lot of people also are stuck in Idlib. It's driving me crazy just to talk about. Anyway, so Idlib we will talk about, but the truth is that today Idlib is like the nightmare of any country in terms of terrorism. If you visit yourself, I can recommend people, but you have to first get approved as a journalist coming here, and from the moment you get approved here, you get authorization of visa. I will help you. I will do my best if you really want to help, if you really want to show another part of the truth. What can I say? Yes, it's already 15 minutes. I can just tell you that if you come here, it will be my great pleasure to take you in a lots of places and to try to show you the best I can about what really happened here. There is no good war. There is no any all white or all black sides. But today I can tell you that this war, the coverage which have been made by the Western media, is wrong, fake, and corrupt. There are things that need to be publicized about violation here. But the problem is that we only talk about 10%